Welcome to the Eddie Network podcast. I'm your host, Ed Breniger. Our conversation today is a continuation between me and Mark McGrath of AGLX Consulting. I think you're going to find the continuation of our conversation even more interesting than the first one. And we'll go all the way to a point where we just stopped talking, but we really didn't stop talking. We kept going, but where we went after the end of our podcast was to talk about some more things that are of interest to us. I appreciate Mark's friendship and his work that he does, and I think you're going to find him a very challenging and interesting person. And I hope you will follow him as well as following the Eddie Network podcast. So thanks for watching, and here's the rest of my conversation with Mark McGrath.
I mean, yeah, everybody's got families where there's people on different sides of the political spectrum or whatever. And it's what I find fascinating when you have, people in your family, in your broader family. There's service academy graduates, there's Ivy League graduates, there's PhDs, there's lots of graduate degrees, and you show them facts, they absolutely don't care. It doesn't matter. And that was the point in my disinformation article. Facts aren't going to solve it. Fact checking doesn't do anything. It's reorienting. It's reorientation. That only comes from leadership and influence.
So here's my last question for you.
Yeah.
We're all in work context, relational context,
Mm-hmm.
where reorientation matters. And so you have this 5T method,
Mm-hmm.
which is, so you're sitting in a business meeting and you're from out of one ear, you're listening for the 5T record. That record is spinning. And on the other, you're thinking out of your other ear, how am I to respond to this? Because what is being presented sounds very logical, sounds rational, sounds very positive, but I know it's going to end badly because your orientation is to see the what's the whatever that thing is that you see when you're presented something and you just in your gut, this is not going to end well. How do I act in a way to help bring a different orientation to what we're doing? I mean, I think that's the challenge that we all have, which is not just believing that reorientation is, but it's actually doing reorientation in the context of our relationships with people.
Hmm.
Any thoughts about that? Because I see that I think it's something that has to happen with our neighbors, with our families, with our business associates, with people on the train or walking. I mean, I have a guy that mows my grass, and I had to reorient him the other day. He wanted to borrow money from me, and I said, I don't give out money.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, the fact that you're asking me for money tells me that you have problems that I can't solve for you. And that kind of ended the conversation.
Hmm.
I see this as a relationship thing that is really important. I guess this is where I'm headed, and that if we can be um, caring and constructive in our reorientation with people that we're talking to, that we bring them into a different environment of thought where they see what we see. I think a lot of that is well, sorry, I'm rambling. I apologize. I'm rambling.
No.
Let me come back to this is really what is has got me agitated. It's the fact that so much of what we're experiencing and so much of what we are fed Um, there, there are huge consequences to believing these things, but there's almost no accountability for them.
Right.
And the issue of accountability, I think, is a big one.
Mm.
And and when we sever accountability from authority, then we really have chaos. And so I see that a whole lot of reorientation is how to.
Give me maybe give it maybe an example. Like give me an example of a situation where there was no accountability.
Okay, I'm going to give you an example of a friend of mine who was working in a business. She was a program director, and she had a defined job, and the job had clear lines of accountability. And then a new executive came in. This is a small business, probably has 20 people that work there.
Mm.
New executive comes in, and he hires two people to be supervisors over the program people. So before, the program people would meet as a committee, and they would determine where the program goes. But now these supervisors have been assigned to determine where the program goes, but they're not responsible for the program, so they're not accountable. And so what happened to this friend of mine was she slowly and then almost very rapidly began to see all the things that she had done in the past, all the decisions she made being taken away from her. But they were never told to her that they were being taken away. They just were taken away, and she'd find out after the fact.
Mm.
And then the next thing she knows, she's being asked to resign.
Mm.
Now, that means is that the program does not have accountability anymore. It has someone who is supervising it, but there's no one to, and so that person is not accountable for the program. They're there only to supervise the program.
Yeah.
So the reorientation for that, I mean, in talking with her, I said the reorientation is to call that out and to say, so you're going to be accountable for the program and and as we discussed it, what really was happening was the new senior person was putting a buffer between himself and the program so that he would not have to be held accountable.
Yeah.
So if you're the program person, you have to go through a reorientation of what's going on, and
Mm.
and probably what you have to do is say, well, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm going to leave.
Well, you just open up another topic that I write about. You know, you're describing Guardians of Decay.
Guardians of Decay.
You're describing Guardians of Decay, and they're everywhere, and they're in bureaucracies, and they're in organizations, they're in schools, they're in universities, they're in the military, they're in companies, they're literally everywhere,
And families.
and they're in families,
Yeah.
and and you know, if you go in the world of reorientation, just having Guardians of Decay, I mean, I've had so much fun creating the imagery for this with AI, but they're so relatable, and people are like, "That's the most relatable picture I've ever seen." They want you to shut up. They want you to stop asking questions. They want you to. They don't fight for truth or change. You know, they basically become defenders of a collapsing status quo. They're not reorienting. These are the people that fought John Boyd at every angle. This is what James Fallows, quite honestly, I was telling you at the beginning, was describing Donald Trump being a master of the OODA loop sketch. I mean, this is what he was talking about in national defense, is like the Guardians of Decay, that want these bloated weapon system programs that are irrelevant or obsolete or whatever, and then they go around and they enforce this through suppression of inquiry, through you know, uh, taking good faith questions in recasting those things as negativity or division or violence. And if you read the article that I wrote, narrative weapons are being used against you, I used an example where child psychologists and authors were targeting their own. They were targeting special needs mothers that were talking about a section of the topic was autism. They were targeting mothers of profound, severely autistic children with a condescending tone, with constant, these old washed up tropes. We're all in this together. We just need to calm down. And then the tactics, just barrages of logical fallacies, like an Iowa class battleship, just broadsiding, just logical fallacies. And these people have doctorates too, which is astonishing to me. I think that you should be able to demonstrate competency and logic to have a doctorate, but that's just my own personal opinion. But anyway, um, and we're seeing these things, and they're suppressing, and what they're doing is ultimately defending a system, wittingly or unwittingly. They're defending systems that they have not critically examined. They haven't critically examined and self-reflected on their own orientation, nor are they critically examining or reflecting on the orientation of the organizations that they wind up becoming shills for, wittingly or unwittingly, as they advance official narratives, as they advance what's being programmed to them. So, yeah, Guardians of Decay is a recurring theme of what we talk about, and what the Guardians of Decay hate are reformers. And reform is an act of love, right? You love an organization, you want to reform it. They hate revolutionary. They hate innovation. They hate anybody that understands that the world is volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous, and we have to constantly reorient in that. So guys like John Boyd, guys like Marshall McLuhan, guys like Patrick Henry, I mean, they're always reduced to one thing. By the Guardians of Decay, that are ultimately defending their own terrain. They're defending their own turf, and they're everywhere.
And if
And
you're in that kind of situation, you might find yourself being fired from your job,
yeah,
but
yeah,
that's a good thing. It's a good thing. I mean, it may not be good in the short term, but in the long run,
yeah.
because what they're saying to you is you have qualities that are disturbing the way we operate here, and we need to get rid
Hmm.
of them. And if that,
Yeah, think about, like, I mean, take a relatable example of, say, like, I mean, I was born in 76. I know you were born in, like, what, 74, 70, 72, something like that, right? We're we were born before 1990. Let's put it that way.
yeah,
And we know what it's like to go to a Blockbuster video, and we know what it's like to rent a movie, and we know what it's like to be excited about, basically having a movie type experience at a retail store that was selling all the candy and popcorn that they sell at the movie theater for you to take home and watch at your own leisure, stop and pause and get up and go to the bathroom and come back and rewind it and whatever, and then bring the movie back. That was a great thing. I mean, going to Blockbuster was an event. It was a big deal. And if they didn't have what you wanted, that was okay, because guess what? There was another alternative right there. And the Guardians of Decay at Blockbuster wanted nothing to do with this upstart that wanted to sell to them, called Netflix, that thought, hey, we can get home movies, we can get movies into the house better, faster through streaming. And they're like, get out of here. We're a retail company. We have a great retail experience. We've built our brand on this, and maybe we had the switch from VHS to DVD, but we're doing just fine. We don't need you. And anybody that questioned that or challenged that was cast out. And these people had, stock options and considerable wealth and houses out in the Hamptons, or whatever it was. That wasn't enough to stop their company from being completely wiped out. And Kodak was no different. And you can go down the list of other examples of how a status quo was defended to the point of inevitable obsolescence because they couldn't get out of their own way. They couldn't accept the change. They couldn't accept the fluidity of volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity, aka VUCA. The other week, I had the thing, the movie of the week, the Whirl of night at the movie night for Whirl of Reorientation was Patton. And there's a great quote in there. He's like, fixed defenses are monument to human stupidity. Because if you're agile and you're moving and you're innovative, you're going to get around. You don't even have to go through the fixed defense. That's what Blitzkrieg was. You know, the Maginot Line was the most innovative and amazing defensive structure ever built, and the Germans just went right around it, right over it, right around it, because you know they were oriented differently. And this, I don't know, this it's just a recurring theme. I think it just
So,
goes on and on. Yeah.
so here's my last. This is my last question. Um, you're in the thick of all this, and I mean you're a you know I guess we can use the term warrior. I mean, would you apply that to yourself? Because you're fighting things in the public space,
Hmm.
and I'm appreciative of that. You know,
Hmm.
I don't know if you want that language applied
No,
to you.
I'm a Marine. Yeah, being called a
You're a
warrior
Marine.
is that's not an insult.
Okay.
Yeah.
What I want to know is where you find hope for the future. Because I think we give ourselves to the things that we do because we do have some hope that it matters and that it can produce positive change in the future. And these are the things that we love. The things we love, we give ourselves to because we believe that if we do so, it will make the world or part of the world a better place because of this.
Yeah.
And it's not simply retarding decay. It's something more than that. So what? How do you relate to the prospects of hope for the future?
I know that people that I try to follow their modeling, humans that have, you know, that I've tried to follow their modeling, often wind up, uh, you know, you could start with nailed to a cross and you could go all the way up to, uh, you know, poor and penniless and pessimistic when they died. And whatever's next, I think that I think that focusing on truth over tribalism and over tropes and things like that, I think is in the long run, that's where I get my hope. And you know, without we don't have to go into the specifics of my own personal faith, but I really do think that when you look at innovators, when you look at whether it was radicals like, I mean, let's just face it, Christ was a radical. John Boyd was a radical. Marshall McLuhan's a radical. Patrick Henry's a radical. Galileo was a radical. I mean, you know, Copernicus was a radical. They in their lifetime, they weren't treated. And I'm not presupposing that I'm doing anything on the scale that my exemplars are, but I think you know what I mean. I what I think that the what I can do, what I take hope in, is try to model this to other people. And as I'm teaching, I'm also learning, and I feel that as we teach together and we learn together, we reorient and we get better. And that's the whirl of reorientation, and that's what the title comes from John Boyd's briefing, conceptual spiral. You know, we're supposed to innovate and adapt and improve, and that often comes, as he would say, to be or to do. You can choose to be, and you're going to get all the club memberships, and you're going to get all the stock options, and you're going to have the cushy job, and you're going to get a company car, and everybody's going to say you went to a great school, and boy, he works for a good firm, and da 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 da. And you know what? No one's going to remember your name. Nobody. Or you can do, and that was the other thing that John Boyd said. There's a fork in the road: to be or to do. Choose to do. And if you look at the article that I reposted, that where I send people to learn about John Boyd's baseline. You know, it's the Tao of Boyd, and there's John Boyd's roll call: to be or to do. And they were both written by Brett and Kate McKay at the Art of Manliness, that are on Substack at The Dying Breed. We don't have enough people that choose to do. And I think that again, it comes at a high cost. Um, in movie terms, I guess you could say, yeah, I'm a red pill guy. I'm a person that takes the red pill. I want to know the truth. I don't care what it costs me. I don't care if they take everything away from me. I have to keep my soul intact, and I have to keep my integrity intact, and I have to keep my orientation intact. And I would think that McLuhan and Boyd and, go down the list of all the, I think that they were fine with that. And that's where I get hope, is that there are countless examples of people that have done that, and didn't go along with the crowd.
Well, I want to say this that I encourage you to stay vigilant in this because this is where I find my hope. I'm more hopeful today than I have been in 5 years
Yeah.
because I see things happening. They're not going to happen at the institutional level.
Mm-mm.
It's not, we're not going to change institutions. What we're going to change is society from the relationship level up.
Yeah.
And you're not just simply going to influence people, you're going to have an impact upon people. Well, you are. And there are many people like you who are out there. And the challenge is um, not to expect quick responses
Yeah.
and to be vigilant in doing what you're called to do, regardless of what it looks like in the territory that you're in.
Yeah. I mean, I can say from my own personal standpoint, I don't know what it is about me, Ed. I would love to, I mean, I guess I kind of do go deeper on this often. Um, I'm sure both of my parents would say we didn't raise them to be like this. Like we, I was from birth. I was raised to be a West Pointer, and I decided to be a Marine. And and not only a Marine that didn't go to an academy, but a Marine that went to a Jesuit university that really challenged thinking and inquiry. Um, and constantly making the conscientious choice to do what others were not doing. I mean, we could do a whole episode just on the book, The Art of Contrary Thinking. I was talking about Bernays and a lot of those other guys earlier, but one of the books that was a driver for me that I got in the year 2000 was The Art of Contrary Thinking by Humphrey B. Neal, Neill. And it did wonders for me in the sense that it validated for me what I had always kind of felt. I always kind of felt like something's off, like something I don't know about this. I don't think I want to be like this. Or if that gets me all the quote unquote trappings, and I don't think I want to do that. I don't want to, I don't want to do things that are gonna just not of interest to me. And I don't think enough people do that. And that's what Boyd says. You got to challenge all assumptions. And I was always kind of a odd for an oldest child, but like there was this kind of enfant terrible, like of from a cognitive standpoint, like I just didn't believe what I was told. And
Mhm.
when I went to college, I chose a Jesuit university, and I chose a liberal art. I chose history. I'm actually writing something right now on the importance of the liberal arts in fifth generation warfare, and why I think it's a cognitive weapon if done well, and not indoctrinated. But um, I chose history, but I loved to challenge what I was told, and I was extremely blessed with phenomenal professors. Not all, but most of them in the history department at Marquette at that time encouraged inquiry, and they did not like kids to agree with them. They wanted debate. They wanted pushback. They wanted questions that would lead them to learn something, to lead something new. Um, I think that we have a lot of recency bias, and I think that a lot of people, again, back to 5T, right? Tropes. This is the most important election of all time. It's never been this bad before. Yeah, but well, it's different this time. No, it's not. If you study history honestly and you study history objectively, there's people that have gone through a lot worse than we have. and there is hope in the sense that the sun also rises. When I was a Marine stationed in Japan, they took us to Nagasaki, and I also have been to Hiroshima. And these are thriving, beautiful, modern cities that shame pretty much everything in America from a sense of quality, efficiency, cleanliness. I mean, these are amazing cities. And not 80 years ago, they were nuked. they were they were nuked. And yet they out of the ashes, they've risen into things. So I don't know. I have to have I have to have a lot of hope. I can't give up. But understanding that it's not going to be an easy road, because I don't think it is.
Well, I don't think it needs to be an easy road. I think it just
It
needs.
shouldn't be. Yeah, I hope it's not.
Well, I agree with you. I identify with you greatly. I've not been I don't challenge the status quo. I just don't believe the status quo
Yeah.
um, is um, is is the sort of thing that's going to benefit people.
I
Um,
think in Western civilization, when did Christianity become the status quo? Right, Emperor Constantine.
yeah,
How many were fed the lions leading up to that?
a lot.
Like how many had to hide? How
Well,
many had to hide down? I mean, the term go down the catacombs. I mean,
still
and they're not unique. Other groups, everybody goes through this. These things are not these sort of cycles and waves. I mean, it's the way of the universe. Which, by the way, that's another thing you asked about. What gives me hope? I know it gives me hope. I know that when I stand outside and I can see the Andromeda galaxy, I'm looking at something that happened 2.5 million years ago. And they're looking back at me, and they're looking at something that happened 2.5 million years ago. So as they look at us, if somebody in the Andromeda galaxy is looking at the Milky Way galaxy, they have yet to see the ancient Egyptians. They have yet to see Christ. They have yet to see the printing press. They haven't seen any of that stuff. That light is still traveling and heading towards. So, we're down here arguing about like taxes, or concerned about what Trump or Nancy Pelosi says. Like I lose that really quickly when I think about the wonder and marvel that the universe is, knowing that the universe is predominantly empty space. So I get hope. There's a meme that goes around a lot, and it's the Milky Way. And the Milky Way takes 120,000 years traveling at the speed of light, 120,000 years plus or minus to get from both ends. And it says you're here arguing about pick your topic. So there's hope there.
having a proper perspective is essential for reorientation. And I
Do you ever see the stuff, like I think it was even like the Disney had a cartoon in the 50s about like the atom, and the atom and the things, that the electrons that orbit the atoms, the relative distance from the nuclei to the orbiting protons, or what, I forget the proper terminology, but it's as if it were the Earth and the moon. That's the difference between the space. And it's just like, yeah, I gotta stop worrying about this garbage, you know.
well, we care about the people we care about, and
That's true.
that's where
Yeah,
I think that's the where the bottom line comes down. And if
I
we
agree.
and I see that I see that I'm also I'm not so much a challenger of the status quo, but I just see a big picture, and I don't accept that anyone has kind of the final answer.
Hmm.
And in fact, I find that most people's answers are so narrowly defined that they're not really relevant. And and so I'm looking at to see as broad a perspective as I can have. So
Yeah.
in February I stopped writing for publication, and I stopped a lot of my social media stuff, and I said I'm going to go look at other stuff.
Hmm.
So I started reading T.S. Eliot and William
Good
Faulkner
one. Yeah.
and Shakespeare and others who were not modern, not contemporary to our time.
Yeah.
It's been very, very interesting, and it's focused me on the topic of time,
Yeah.
in particular on the importance of generational memory.
Have you read Bhagavad Gita?
I've read parts of it.
Yeah, I got inspired by that. I had a Eastern philosophy course taught by a famous Jesuit by the name of Father John Nouse when I was at Marquette, and that was my first go around with it. But the second go around with it was one of my role models and heroes is Stephen Pressfield, and he's written tremendous books. But he wrote the book The Legend of Bagger Vance, and that's based off the Bhagavad Gita, and what that talks about is, who are you? Like thinking about really like who are you and finding your authentic self. And I don't think you can do that externally. I think that goes back to what a lot of the faiths say. It's within you, and and I think that's I don't know. It's like Alan Watts. You're familiar with Alan Watts and Teilhard de Chardin. Actually, both of those were sources for Boyd. Boyd had read Alan Watts and Teilhard. But the Bhagavad Gita is a great place to start if you're looking for older texts that kind of challenge the status quo that by and large have concepts that people aren't thinking about and concepts that are universal. One of my most criticized articles was called "The Candle in the Silence," and the picture of John F. Kennedy on it, and talking about. So yeah, everybody wants to know. A lot of people will litmus test me. They say, "Oh, I'm going to subscribe, but I just need to know your politics." And I think that's ridiculous. And I wrote back and I wrote this article saying, "Well, here it is definitively. It's essentially the golden rule. I think that you do unto others is done unto you." And that I didn't just get that from my own perspective and my tradition, but also everybody else seems to do that too. Whatever you put into the universe comes back to you. And
When,
that's a good way to look at it.
when I'm asked that, I tell them I'm a pre-modern post-Marxist.
A pre-modern post-Marxist. I like that. That's interesting.
What does that mean? Well, that's for you to figure out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't.
What's the one I remember this word, I learned it in high school, an anti-disestablishmentarianist.
Yeah.
I don't even know what it means, but people try to spell it out. It's a pretty long word. But
You're against the disestablishment of whatever it is. So yeah,
yeah.
we talked about that being the longest word in the English language. I don't know if that's
It
accurate.
sounds like what John Boy would call a self-licking ice cream cone.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
This has been great. Thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Mark McGrath. I think you will find that if you follow him on Substack and on other platforms, that you'll find your mind challenged, and you'll find yourself gaining perspective that you didn't have before, and it'll be valuable perspective for your own personal life, but also the life that you have in the world of work and society. So thank you for watching. Please hit the like button, subscribe to the YouTube and Substack versions, and we will see you next time here on the Eddie Network Podcast. Bye bye.